Hello and welcome to the Bundesliga show. It seems as though there was a slight malfunction there. For some reason, my browser didn't want to play the intro, but yeah, at least it means we're here a few seconds earlier than initially planned. So yeah, as you can see, obviously I'm joined here by Peter, and obviously we spent the weekend together as well, didn't we? Which we'll talk about a little bit more, but we're a few kilometers apart now. Peter's up in the north of Germany, I'm down in the south. But how are you doing, Peter? Have you recovered from our brilliant weekend?
Well, and of course, we put a lot of road work in this weekend for Over the Bar, and that can be a little bit tiring. But I'm still buzzing in my brain from the good fixtures that we witnessed, and also the ones that we didn't happen to witness live, but we'll be reporting on this evening. How does the evening find you, good sir? After we parted company in Leipzig this morning, you went south, I went north.
Yeah, and I think we parted pretty early as well, at around about just before 5 p.m. German time. So as you can probably tell, I am a little bit tired today. But yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into it as well. Just a reminder that we are sponsored as well by Bundesliga Boxes and by Bully News. We will be using some of the Bully News visuals as well in this show. So if you enjoy what you see with the visuals, check out bullynews.com as well, which is obviously Peter works over there as well, and obviously Runa, our fantastic fantasy football expert as well. So without further ado, Peter, I'm going to hand over to you for the Kiosk Club.
Yes, first I should point out that we parted company at 5 a.m. this morning, not 5 p.m.
That's true. You can tell I'm a little bit tired.
Well, anyway, the big result of the weekend, naturally, is the fact that Mainz have beaten Bayern yet again. As a matter of fact, in 4 of my 6 years as a reporter covering the Bundesliga beat Mainz, I have covered Mainz beating Bayern in the league 4 out of those 6 years. Wow. And in the Süddeutsche Zeitung, we have a very nice shot here of Jae-Sung Lee, who scored a brace in that match. Der Hybrid-Spieler. Here he is paying tribute to, I don't know, what I assume is the Abrahamic God. There's a lot going on in the Bundesliga, and I didn't have time to do full research. I don't know if Jae-Sung Lee is Christian or not. But in any event, there's a wonderful article here about the latest Mainz victory over Bayern, and of course, Jae-Sung Lee's magnificent brace. Our boy Armindo Sieb picked up a pair of assists in that. I'm sure that we'll get into that a little bit later. The Bild Sonntag is leading with, of course, what is the big news, big unfortunate news off the pitch in the German Bundesliga, and that is the Feuerzeug-Skandal in Berlin. If you haven't heard about this yet, and unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure that you have, the match at the Stadion Alte Försterei was suspended around 90+1 after a flare hit Bochum keeper Patrick Drues. He was unable to continue. Match official Martin Peterson sent everybody into the locker room, and eventually they went to complete the match. Bochum did not wish to complete the match. However, they did come out and they did complete it. Drues was unable to come back on. Bochum were out of substitutions, and as a result, Philipp Hoffmann put on the keeper's outfit. Perhaps he might be persuaded to do so again in the future. And they just simply passed the ball around in a gentlemanly manner. It reminds one a little bit of the scenes with the Dietmar Hopp protests in Sinsheim some 4 years ago, when the players played out the final minute of the match, just leisurely passing the ball around in a non-competitive fashion. The big news insofar as that is concerned, and this is breaking news, is that after threatening to do so all weekend, Bochum have actually formally lodged an appeal with the German FA, with the DFB, to overturn the result of this. And one of the reasons that I didn't have time to research whether Jae-Sung Lee was a Christian is because I had to hop on Bully News and write about this. I personally don't see this appeal going through, but it is a talking point. It is something that we can get into. Essentially, Bochum is arguing that since they had exhausted all of their substitution quotas, they were put at a competitive disadvantage. The reason I don't see this appeal going through is because, first and foremost, Martin Peterson was in contact with the DFB while the players were in the dressing room, and the DFB wanted the match finished, and it was Peterson who was acting on DFB orders. This is a rather thin and flimsy appeal, and one problem that we have with this potentially as well is that Bochum will be seeing to try and get their first 3 points of the season in a very cheap legal fashion. I don't think the DFB is going to bend on this, but perhaps I'll be wrong. I don't know. Some more kiosks for you here. The Süddeutsche also, of course, went with the Flair incident as their main story. Kicker went with something a little less controversial this morning. Huge interview with Jurgen Klopp as he prepares to assume his new post as the director, the head of professional soccer for the Red Bull football system. I didn't learn a great deal out of this interview, apart from the fact that I'm not sure that I want these Klopp dentures for myself anymore. They're kind of scary looking. There was also a very interesting interview with Tom Rota. And beyond that, of course, they had a story as to whether or not Manuel Neuer is too old to be the Bayern keeper. Not exactly new news. But all the other usual stuff in the kicker today, including great coverage of all the matches on the weekend. Lastly, I picked this up especially for you, Mark, when I was in Leipzig. It had been a very, very long time since I picked up the Leipziger Volkszeitung in person. And so I went ahead and got a copy this morning at the train station, and there it is with RB Leipzig. Mach's noch einmal. RB schlägt bockstarke Frankfurter 2-1. And I know that you're all hyped and psyched about that. We're going to get into that in a moment. Since I'm from Hamburg, I also found this article about this was in the Leipziger Volkszeitung to be very, very interesting. There was a protest for Kiezkultur. And of course, you may know that Hamburg, St. Pauli, the home of the Kiez Kickers, or the neighborhood club. So they are also a Kiezkultur club, if you will. But what the Leipzig citizens here are protesting, since they're not protesting in the stadium, is they're protesting chain stores in their neighborhoods. If you're in Leipzig, if you're in Bremen, if you're in Hamburg, the Kiezkultur, the neighborhood culture is all of these nice little neighborhood, locally run small kiosks, bodegas, as opposed to the big supermarket chains and things like that. And it's wonderful, if you don't really get that so much. I mean, you get it in the south of Germany, but not on the scale that you get it here in the north of Germany, particularly not in Hamburg. And as I was walking around the streets of Hamburg today, buying fresh fruit for 40 cents and really enjoying myself, I'm very, very proud of the Leipzig citizens for protesting Kiezkultur, because it's great to be experiencing Kiezkultur live here in the north of Germany once again. So, Mark, I guess that brings us to the first match that we want to discuss, which is, of course, this round's capper. And Leipzig's 2-1 win over Frankfurt. This is Leipzig's second league win in a row, and also their second defeat of Frankfurt in as many weeks, in addition to the Pokal there. So rumors of RB Leipzig's death have been greatly exaggerated. And Mark, you were particularly impressed with the victory last night for a number of reasons. Why don't you tell us why?
Yeah, I mean, the game didn't disappoint, did it, at all? I mean, I just thought it was a spectacle of a game, especially from the home side. But, I mean, Frankfurt definitely played their part as well. I think it was a really entertaining game. There probably should have been more goals, but I think particularly Kevin Trapp, who has been criticised a little bit in recent times, but he had a really, really good game. And when I watched back the highlights, because obviously we were in attendance at the Red Bull Arena last night as well, which for those of you that enjoy our vlogs, there will be one coming within the next week, 10 days or so. But yeah, I mean, Kevin Trapp made a lot of saves in this game. But I think the Leipzig team, as you say, it looks a team reborn based on this performance. I genuinely believe they haven't played better this season, certainly what I've seen, including the 3-0 win over Frankfurt in the Cup. They didn't play as well in that game as they did in this 2-1 win. And I just feel as though a lot of that was down to the Campo-Schlager axis. I think, obviously, we did talk a lot, Peter, on Thursday about, what happened to Schlager. And I believe this was his first start of the season, or at least since the first couple of weeks anyway. He just looked fully back to his best, and the box-to-box style just worked brilliantly in this game. He was able to pretty much outrun Larsen and Dahoud in the Frankfurt midfield completely. And, that kind of mixture between Schlager's kind of energy and box-to-box running combined with Campbell's skill, and he really was good. I think I'd always call him the mini magician, but I think when you see him live in person, he's really not that small. Actually, he's just he just looks it on the TV. He's one of those kind of guys. But I mean, the performance was good. Openda was back to his best. Šeško, while still not perfect by any means, it was one of his best performances of the season as well. And I just feel this was good from Leipzig. It really was. And it could just have saved Marco Rosa's job as well. And, when we were watching the Curva at the end of the game, the fans seem relatively happy with what they're seeing at the moment. And respect to them. I mean, they've given Rosa a few chances. They really, really want to make it work for the local boy hero, don't they? I mean, respect to them for that, because I thought they were absolutely finished after the which game was it? It was the 5-1 against Wolfsburg. It looked like it was completely and utterly done for after that. But they've won 3 out of 4 in all comps since then. They threw into the 8 in the cup, where obviously they play VfL Wolfsburg again at home, which is probably not a game they'll be relishing too much after the last time. But they're back on track, Peter. And were you equally as impressed, or do you think Frankfurt maybe deserved more out of the game? Or
very much so. No, I mean, it was actually an excellent tactical match by Rosa. I was keeping an eye on the tactics there as best I could while still enjoying the match in a live fashion. One thing that was certain for me was that it was back 3 versus back 3. And what Rosa did, and he doesn't always go with the back 3. He usually goes with that 4-2-2-2. I always forget if I say that right. 4-2-2-2. Yes. But what he did is he used Henriks and Nusa as wing backs. Though Henriks and Nusa were, as I watched the tape later on, you could see that they were working a split stagger. So Henriks was back a little bit protecting Seiwald in the back 3, and we talked about how Seiwald was playing out of position and actually doing so quite well. And Baumgartner picked up, what was it, 2 assists on both goals, but he admitted in a post-match interview piece that I ended up writing for Bully News today, and he just said it outright: I'm a different player with Sava Schlager in the lineup. Sava Schlager knows how to play me into place. And I don't think that Baumgartner was really acting as a natural 10. I think he was actually stacked right above Schlager. And that Rosa had made a point during the training week to make sure that those two were on the same page, and that Schlager would be looking for Baumgartner in space, playing him through balls, playing him diagonals, playing him hero balls, whatever would be most helpful for him. And so that's why Leipzig ultimately succeeded. Not a bad match by Frankfurt by any stretch of the imagination, but the better team won. And that's not in question. I don't think that that's in question at all. And good for Marco Rosa, good for the hometown boy for maintaining his job there. I think Leipzig need an Aussie, of someone who understands this town and this culture in charge of it. So, yes, I was equally as impressed as you were, to answer your question.
Yeah, and obviously that plays Leipzig back into the title race as well. As things stand, only 6 points adrift of FC Bayern Munich now. And obviously they play them as well for the final Friday night curtain raiser of 2024. So, I mean, if they can go there and win, which if they play like this, they could well do. They'll be back within 3 going into the winter break. So, things are far from drastic. Obviously, the Champions League has been a disaster pretty much, but they're still in the Pokal. As things stand, they're still in the title race, particularly if they can win at Bayern on Friday. But as for Frankfurt, they're obviously on a bit of a poor run, but I actually thought they played really well in this game. I was proud to see my boy Nathaniel Brown get the goal as well, my former Nuremberg hero there. It initially, obviously, Ozun was a disappointment in truth. He's still not found his feet by any means at the club. And I do hope that he can, get a little break and improve after the winter break. But yeah, good match, really, really high quality, good advert for the Bundesliga, this one. And if you want to see more of it, check out our vlog, which will be coming out within the next few weeks. So a few days, I should say, not weeks. So yeah, let's move on. I mean, we're going to go to probably the result of the round, really, wasn't it? I mean, the one that probably most people want to hear about today. It is the Mainz versus Bayern Munich encounter. So, I mean, Peter, I mean, obviously in the predictions, you were pretty confident for Die Bayern, weren't you? I think you went for a 3-1. I went for a 2-2. So I think I can claim victory on that one a little bit. But yeah, I mean, what a performance from Die Mainz, you know. I mean, it was just a brilliant performance, a high energy performance, you know. And that second goal, I think it was a tale of two goals, really, wasn't it? The first one was a little bit scrappy. The Lee finished from a deflected cross. But the second goal, you know, was a real high-quality team move with obviously Sieb involved and Kachi as well. I mean, Peter, first of all, let's start by crediting Mainz. I mean, it was a massive performance. It's now 5 wins in 6 in the Bundesliga, and they're doing really well, aren't they?
Yeah, well, the Sportbild today said that Mainz are now officially Bayern's Angstgegner, or their bogey team. That might be a slight exaggeration. The Süddeutsche here did help me out here. So Mainz have beaten Bayern in the 2020-21 campaign, 2021-22 as well, 2022-23 as well. They did not beat them last year, but now this one here. So, you know, we'll start with the good news concerning Mainz. First and foremost, the fact that Jonathan Burkhardt went down with injury early could have absolutely torpedoed their prospects. But Sieb, who has not necessarily had a great run this year, came in and slotted in almost perfectly, grabbing those 2 assists. Another quality match from Nabel. Kachi was really pestering the Mainz goal and slipping past Leroy Sané on that Bayern left-hand side in most impressive fashion. The back 3, missing Danny Da Costa, but with Moritz Jens in place, it held extremely well. I would not necessarily say that this was a top combination footballing performance. It was a determined effort. It was a disciplined effort, and it featured significant amount of razzle dazzle from Lee on that second goal. The first one was kind of, you know, a comedy of errors after a little bit of pinball in the box. The XG, if you want to help me out on this, I think Bayern actually did exceed them in terms of XG.
It was about 1.1 for Mainz against 1.3, so it was relatively level.
Okay, indeed. Yeah, so, I mean, this was not exactly a feast for the eyes, this match. And you can call into question some of Kompany's tactics in this instance as well. I mean, of course, let's not forget the long list of players that Bayern are missing. They are missing Manuel Neuer. They're missing Serge Gnabry. They're missing Kingsley Coman. They're missing Paulinho. They're missing Alphonso Davies. Most importantly, they are missing Harry Kane, who is everything to that team. You know, the tactics that Kompany rolled out in the league last week were actually very good. They were very innovative. They were very brave. And what was it? I think Guerrero was even playing as high up as I've ever seen him play on the pitch. He was almost a 10. Of course, I think you had Davies fit in that match, so Guerrero had to go back and fill in for Davies in this one. Anyway, the 4-4-2 from Bayern left a lot to be desired, though. Michael Olise, he hit the post with that cracker early, and we could be discussing a very, very different result had he been able to finish off what was a truly wonderful play from him. So we don't want to read too much into it, but the fact that Bayern have incurred their first league of defeat of the season on a weekend in which Leipzig won and Leverkusen, the defending champions, also won, is huge news. Whether or not you want to read too much into the result or not. That would be my take on the match. Mark, what further thoughts do you have to add?
Yeah, I definitely think Mainz deserve credit. I mean, I think Henriksen did he came out and said that if you defend too much against Bayern, you suffer or something like that. And I think he's right. Teams that attack Bayern tend to do better because this is not a vintage defense by any means for Bayern. You know, I mean, obviously Eric Dyer was called up for, I think it could have been his first or second start of the season. Like, he's really not been favoured at all by Vincent Kompany at all. So, I mean, he didn't have a particularly strong game. I think Daniel Peretz has struggled a little bit. I mean, I think he's not kept a clean sheet yet since he came in the team. I mean, there wasn't much you could do about these 2 goals, but I think the defense isn't looking particularly assured like it was a few weeks ago. As for Bayern, yeah, I think, as you say, the Elise effort was amazing early on, but aside from that they didn't do much. I agree. I think we can't read too much into it because there are so many injuries, and at the end of the day, the winter break is coming to potentially, relieve them of some of those injuries. I would imagine Kane will be fully fit and back to start again by early January when we restart. He'll probably miss the Leipzig game, which could be a further problem as well because, they do look a shadow of the team without him, really, to be honest. But I don't. It does change. Of course, it changes a little bit with regard to the title race because now there's only 4-point lead. I think they had the 7-point lead earlier in the week, so it's almost halved basically that lead, which is significant. But realistically, they're still big favourites. I think when Harry Kane comes back, when Paulinho comes back, it's going to look a much better team again, to be honest. But it proves that this Bayern squad, as has been the issue for a couple of years, they don't have that much strength in depth. I think because they pay so much to the players and they don't have the squad to kind of pad it out, basically. So when they get a couple of injuries to key players and they're bringing in the likes of Thomas Muller, who's, let's be honest, seen better days, really. And, a guy like Peretz, who, you would expect that Bayern Munich would have more quality as a second string keeper than him. But yeah, Guerrero has never really massively impressed for Bayern either. So there's definitely still an issue where, for me, the squad isn't the deepest in the league. They sometimes seem a little bit reluctant to use young players as well and blood them at times. So yeah, it's definitely not over. I think Rory actually said it earlier in the season. He brought up the point that Kompany is inexperienced at the highest level. He's never won a title before. He has won a promotion, but he's never won a domestic, league title, a championship. So, yeah, there are still some issues. They need to get the key men back, but they're not going to do the Leverkusen last year. They're not going to do the unbeaten season. So credit to Mainz for that. And we've got a title race again. What more could we want? We would have even more of a title race if Leipzig can even get a point against Bayern on Friday, but that remains to be seen, of course. Ballum checking in as well. Yeah, obviously mentioning the fact that Bayern finally lost this season. He says, yeah, and it is Leipzig next as well. And yeah, one of my quotes as well, play tell. I like that one. That's very straightforward, that one is, yeah. Not quite as good as can you tell what Jabby is cooking, but yeah, it's still a good one. Maybe that'll be my quote for the season this time, Ballum. So yeah, let's move on. So another game that myself and Peter, obviously we were busy all covering all angles of the Bundesrepublik Deutschland this weekend, weren't we, Peter? And we started the weekend deep down in the southwest corner in Peter's beloved Baden, so we did a bit of singing the songs as well for the Baden, and we really enjoyed our day, didn't we, in Freiburg? And the game absolutely didn't disappoint as well this time around. So this is another game that we attended. So again, check out our vlog. It will be coming out within the next few days to week. But as for the game, Peter, that's what we're going to be focusing on today. This was a really interesting game. I watched the highlights back again earlier today, and I think we forgot about a few of the chances that were missed as well. In the first half, Atabolu made 2 really good saves from Amora and also from Kouliakis in the centre half, who poked a really good header on target. From where we were sitting, Peter, it looked as though it was just like a kind of, speculative effort, but it actually was going in if Atabolo hadn't scrambled across to that one. But then obviously Freiburg did assert the dominance, and 2 goals through corners as well, actually, from Kubler, gave them the 2-0 lead. And then a really well-worked goal from Doan. And for me, man of the match, Grigoric. I thought he was fantastic. He really was in this game. He scored a really nice third goal. But then, we said at the time, Peter, that maybe it was the subs, Schuster's subs, that kind of let Wolfsburg back in the game. he did make a few questionable subs in this game, really bringing off Kubler, first of all, who was on a hat-trick, incredibly, at that point, for Makengo. And, I mean, that didn't work out particularly well, did it? Then a couple of other questionable subs, like removing Grifo after 70 minutes and Gunter as well. So basically both of his first-choice fullbacks were taken off, and then the rather, questionable Makengo and Sildilia replaced them. And Wolfsburg, in the end, could easily got a point. I mean, they replied through a really nice finish from Jonas Wind. And me and Peter had just been criticizing him as well in the stadium, saying, he doesn't, Amora on the wing isn't working that well. But he finished that really, really nicely. And then an even better finish, really, from Svanberg with the overhead kick, one for the cameras. And then Maxi Arnold had that strike at the end, which was really well hit. And there was another good save from Atabolu, who made 3 or 4 really good saves in the game, actually. I mean, Peter, at the time we said Freiburg deserved the win. They were the better team. And having watched the highlights, would you still agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the only highlight that you neglected to mention was the Hürle's hit off the post as well. And so that was another one that I almost forgot about, even though we were there and we were watching it, really relishing in it as well. Tactically, this was a very good match from Schuster, who had Günther on a bit of a split stagger with Kubler. Kubler actually didn't manage all that much in open play. I mean, his second brace of the season came off of 2 set pieces, but I liked both of those set pieces very, very much. And they were set up by the respective Freiburg strikers, Höhle and Gregoritsch, in very, very clever ways. I'm not sure that those were initially the plans that Schuster had drawn up on the training pitch. But going back to watch the highlights, those were not coincidental setups. Höhle and Gregoritsch set those up incredibly well. Doan also got a decent shot on target during the first half. That you can see on the highlight reel, and of course provided the assist on Gregoritsch's goal with what was, a fairly simple but very precise and well-timed high ball into the high diagonal there into the box for Gregoritsch. I mean, in terms of the substitutions that Schuster made, you almost do feel like he deserved to have the game blown or snatched away from him due to these substitutions. We have to take into account that Rosenfelder, Dingchi, and Röhl are all coming back from injury. So he wanted to get those players some minutes and get them warm, to have them, as an option perhaps for the last game before the winter break, and just to keep them fit overall. Once he brought on Makengo and Sedilia, that's a different matter, of course. With regard to Hasenhüttl's tactical changes after the restarts, I do stand by the fact that Amora on the wing is not the best option. I mean, he is incredible he had that incredible counter chance in the first half. And he's very, very pacey up the middle, but he doesn't quite have the pace to make the same sort of impact on the wing. And that's what you have to do with him when you bring Wind on, because a double striker set with those 2 guys, I don't know, maybe it doesn't work because there's such a difference in physique, and they can't exactly work out the approximate meters of separation in which they should be operating at on a regular attack charge. Bringing in, so I mean, initially, I don't think the tactical change from Hasenhüttl really produced much. It was the next tactical change that he did when he actually took off Wimmer, brought on Svanberg, and then Yannick Gerhardt as well came on for Ben Stardai. And it was Gerhardt and Svanberg who were sort of working as like rotating eights, and that worked out quite well. And then by the time that he got Lucas Nemecha on, he could play a 3-striker set, a 4-3-3, and that took a little bit of the heat off of Moore, and Moore could make some more enterprising runs on the left-hand side. Just a good game of football, a great game of football there in Breisgau, and looking forward to piecing the vlog together soon. Been a busy day catching up on things in the Bully newsroom, and of course traveling from Leipzig to Hamburg. But I'll get straight to work on the editing work tomorrow, and we'll get those out for you as soon as possible. Of course, I mean, the real tragedy of that vlog is that we didn't get you a chance to show you how truly beautiful Freiburg and Breisgau is, which may or may not have been possible considering the fact that it's winter, it's cold, it gets dark at 4 p.m. and and all of these things. Yeah, I mean, not only am I looking forward to piecing that vlog together soon, I hope to do another one in the near future because there's a lot to show when it comes to Freiburg, when it comes to this beautiful, idyllic, serene, peaceful town on the Dreisam, and the people there, you know, whom the people whom you had the privilege of meeting some of them. I hope we meet more and maybe even get some more before the cameras in a future vlog there.
Yeah, absolutely. And come on, let's give them one more rendition of the Freiburg song that we've been singing the whole weekend. Come on. SC Freiburg. That was our tired rendition. Yeah.
No. Here, Breisgau Bier. Badische Wein. Münster und Ahnen.
Yeah, you got to check it out, guys. Yeah, there's some brilliant songs. Yeah, and also check out Peter's Baden-Land tune as well. That's another classic as well.
For sure.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, probably the only thing that Freiburg and Hoffenheim have in common as well, the fact that they both play that song before kickoff, isn't it? Really. Anyway, let's move on to the final game of the featured four, which was maybe not quite so. I mean, the result was relatively expected, in truth. Just a nice comment in from Balam as well, actually. Yeah, the over-the-bar curse. We were praising Ralph Hasenhüttl the other day. That is true. But, I mean, yeah, they came up against a strong Freiburg side on this particular day. I'm sure Wolfsburg won't be down for too long the way they're playing at the moment. Yeah, he also says, is there a Bundesliga show next Monday? There should be. I was thinking about that earlier today. I mean, it's not normal for the Bundesliga to go on so close to Christmas, actually. I mean, the last games will be on the 22nd, which there might be a few protests about that potentially with games being so close to Christmas this year. But yeah, there should be a show as far as I know. I'm not sure what the roster will be for that day, but there will be a show, I would imagine. So yeah. Especially with so many big games as well. Thanks for asking that one, Balan.
All our audience, do keep your fingers crossed for our colleague Rory. He's not with us tonight because he's got some important interviews today. So send some warm thoughts Rory's way.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned, the next game probably wasn't too much of a shock in terms of the result, but I think with the number of goals that were scored, we felt compelled to cover this one. And it was obviously Gladbach 4, Holstein Kiel 1. Yeah, what can you say about this one? I mean, they were literally behind inside a minute through a really, really nice work goal from front to back, really, wasn't it? Honoras applying Kleindienst, who jumped up like a fish out of water, didn't he? Like a salmon leaping for his prey, and scored yet another goal. I mean, what a signing he's been, really, Peter, for Tim Kleindienst. And I mean, you've got a question really now. Do Germany even have a better number 9 than him, really? I mean, the guy is just an absolute machine, and he's finishing even better than what he was at Heidenheim, I think, last season. Anyway, obviously, it did get even worse for Kiel as well after goals from Robin Hack and then a double from Alessandro Plea, who was on one of his better days. Either side of a kind of consolation from Gigovic, who it was good to see him start, but Lewis Holtby once again did line up in this game. So, Peter, I mean, I know you watched this one in a little bit more detail than me. So what was you thinking of this one? Was it just like a kind of routine win, or was there anything special in there for this one?
Well, most of the German press sources believe that there is something quite special about this Gladbach win. They've called it a rise out of mediocrity. The table doesn't necessarily bear that out just yet, and the fact that they were playing Holstein Kiel doesn't constitute the best evidence. But a lot of very important factors here. First and foremost, I actually wrote an article about this a few weeks back about the relationship between Tim Kleindienst and Frank Honorat. And Tim, said, Frankie knows me by now. He's got intuition. He's got good muscle memory for me, and that's exactly how they were able to score that goal in the opening minute that enabled them to dictate the game, essentially. Honorad actually he got another assist on a play goal a little bit later. Fantastic match from Playa in the 10 slot. He's probably the number one choice for Seoane in the 10 slot. Holstein Kiel, former Holstein Kiel captain Philippe Sander, of course, made his starting 11, or not his starting 11 debut, but one of the few starts that he's made this season for his new club, and worked pretty seamlessly in midfield with Rocco Reitz throughout. So that's another huge promising development for Seoane's Vollenelf. No double puck for Robin Haak this time around, but he made an incredibly strong case for himself in the starting 11 in this one. It could be the case that, and Seoane has caught so much flack for me on this show and in my writing for over tinkering, for just never sticking with a system and something like this. This is absolutely something that he could continue doing despite my protestations. But I think that Gladbach have found their best 11 here, and in the 4-3-2-3-1 formation. Not even sure I want Luca Netz back in place of Lucas Ulrich on that left back position. And the point you raise about Kleindienst is absolutely in order. I don't think Kiel's Phil Harris is going to be called up to the German national team anytime soon, particularly not after this performance. It was interesting, just another set of nothing tactics from Rapp. I mean, who just cannot seem to get his house in order here. I suppose the compromise between the great Gigovic, Lewis Holtby position was to play them both as buttressing support attackers in a 3-3-2-2. Gigovic, despite the fact that he scored a goal in this one, never really looked comfortable in that role. Mark, you'll be happy to know that pretty much every bad word you said about Lewis Holtby in the last few weeks, it was absolutely confirmed. I thought he was putrid in this match, and I think it was such that he was yanked off eventually, probably about way too late, 45 minutes too late, if you want my personal opinion. And Harris was yanked at the half in favor of Pilcher. So I don't know. I mean, Kiel, the sad thing about this is that, I mean, it just seems like they have no. I mean, there were moments in that Leipzig loss last week where they really played with a lot of grit and heart and soul, but that just seemed to evaporate yet again. You know, we cannot see some consistency from this team in terms of actually wanting to maintain the class this season, either from the players that we see on the pitch, from the coach who selects his lineup, and so many miscues when it comes to just basic combination football that makes one wonder, what are they doing on the training pitch? I imagine the training pitch in Schleswig-Holstein is quite cold this time of year. Hopefully they have a bubble or something that they can work in there. But it just seems like they're not gelling in any way, shape, or form. You know, and that's most concerning. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried about Kiel. I think we talked about it over the weekend, Peter, that like it's already kind of looking like the writing's on the wall for that bottom two. I mean, Bolcom obviously with a slightly improved performance this weekend, but ultimately couldn't get the win. And they're 14 without a win, and Kiel have only had one win in that 14. And as you say, there was a period when they looked like they were going to stand up and compete when they beat Heidenheim, and then they were unlucky to lose to a last-minute Werder Bremen goal in the game after. But the last few weeks, it just seems to be getting worse and worse. And so some of those players that were looking good for a period, no more than Phil Harris, who I think scored like 3 and 4 at one stage. The last couple of games, he's been dreadful, basically. And he looks very much like a Regionalliga player again now, to be honest, the last couple of games. Yeah, and it's just this obsession with playing Holtby. I mean, I'm glad, Peter, you've finally seen what I've been seeing the whole season, because, like, as I say, it's just like kind of bringing out your Rolls Royce just for the sake of it. Basically, your old battered Rolls Royce just for the sake of it. Like, he is obviously the biggest name that they've got at that club, but I mean, to say he's past it is a massive understatement, to be honest. And maybe he was good enough at the Zweite, but at the Bundesliga standard, just forget it, basically. And the only way they're going to stay up is if they can bring in some reinforcements in January. But again, those kind of smaller clubs, like, they played a lot of years in the second and third league, they don't have much money to go around. So it's whether they want to take a risk and give someone like a good loan contract for 6 months that might potentially get them in the playoff, but could potentially cause them financial damage as well. So that is the dilemma they're facing at the minute. I think as for Gladbach, I think it's a bit of an overstatement to say that this particular game has brought them out of mediocrity, because they were playing a poor Kiel team, let's be honest. But I think this season we've seen signs that they are improving. I think Sioan has definitely been better this season than last season, so improvement is there. They've still not got that back-to-back wins yet, though. It's probably going on 3 years now since they last got that. I mean, they do have a chance. I think they play Hoffenheim this weekend, so I mean that's a presentable chance to finally get that first back-to-back wins. But they are going to start having to do that, because just as things stand, there's quite a lot of formed teams in the Bundesliga. Freiburg, Wolfsburg, Mainz are all playing well at the minute. And otherwise, Gladbach won't be able to get in Europe again. And ultimately, that's what they need. They need to get at least Europa League again so they can get a bit of confidence back in the club. But, things looking decent for them. I wouldn't say amazingly good. And they have let down couple of times this season as well, but they are doing okay. For Kiel, it's going to be a long season, let's be honest. So yeah, that concludes the featured four, but we've got a few other games to mention as well. So go on, Peter. I know you wanted to do the rundown this week, so I'm going to let you do the honors. So yeah, what stood out? Do you want to take us through a little kind of best of the rest countdown for this weekend?
Certainly. As Ballum correctly points out, Bayer Leverkusen are back in the title race with a 2-1 victory over Augsburg. My prediction that Augsburg would put up a fight and even nick a draw off of Leverkusen at home proved patently false. Fairly sovereign win for Germany's Red Company team. Nothing much doing there. Can you hear me fine? Is everything okay?
Yeah,
I think this was last week, which I froze, so I'm a little paranoid.
Good old life, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, yes, that as I said, there's not too much terribly to say about that. Viatz and Terrier, who were both working as support attackers behind Tella, both got goals in that one, and so it finished 2-0 in favor of the Wexelf. We spoke about the controversy involving the VfL Bochum versus FC Union Berlin match, which ended in a 1-1 draw. There's probably not much to say about the football match itself. The less said, the better. 1-1 was going to be my initial tip in that regard, but I think I changed it after a little while. A 1-1 draw was what I expected. Not the most exciting football on hand from either team, and I'll reiterate what happens to be my personal opinion on the matter. That I really don't think the DFB is going to be interested in this Bochum appeal, and it seems rather cheap when it comes down to it, because the incident that led to the match getting suspended took place at 90+1, and Bochum were short-handed due to Koji Miyoshi's straight red card. So yeah, there's just not a lot to talk about there between two teams who are continually struggling in attack, and two teams that are going to have problem supplying visually intriguing football this season. That, of course, brings us to the Saturday evening Topspiel between Werder and St. Pauli. This was actually a northern derby of sorts between two Hanseatic city-state sides. Hamburg's Kiez kicker have a terrible record against Bremen, and that record is continued after a 0-2 loss to Ole Werner's visiting Hanseaten. there wasn't a lot on display from the hosts in this particular instance. Eggestein got an effort in at one point, I believe. Buchhalfa got an effort in. But apart from that, Werder essentially dominated the game. Jens Stage with another amazing setup of Derek Köhn's goal in this one. And then, of course, Marvin Duksch added the second. Pretty well-deserved win for Werder. St. Pauli still struggling at home. Yet another instance in which they did not score a goal at home. And we have problems there as well. Well, fans of Giovanni Reyna may be pleased to know as GR7, as he is known in American footballing circles now. He scored a goal, first goal in 19 months against TSG 1899 Hoffenheim. Unfortunately for Nuri Sahin's...
Alert from low battery.
Thank you. Low battery. Nuri Sahin's Borussia Dortmund, of course, were undone late by former Dortmund academy man and prospect Jakob Brun Larsen, the Dane, and the match ended in a 1-1 draw. Actually, some harsh words from Sahin for his team and his players after that. Said it was just a piss poor performance from everyone involved, with the exception of Reyna. And it hurt to have Jakob Brun Larsen equalize late. Brun Larsen, of course, later said that BVB means a lot to him and his family. They supported him through thick and thin, mostly through thin, before finally selling him to Hoffenheim, where he's had his struggles with adversity as well. And that just leaves Rory's VfB Stuttgart with a fairly convincing win over FC Heidenheim. There was an interesting article in the Kicker which said that at least Heidenheim sagt hello. They said hello this time. They showed up this time with a goal from Paul Vanna, the Bayern loanee, worth watching. But that wasn't nearly good enough for Frank Schmidt's struggling Ellbogenstäbler, in large part because the Nick Voltamada show continued. The 2-meter tall Messi picked up a pair of assists in the win. And good for him. I forget which VfB Stuttgart podcast it was that mentioned that, what do they call him, like the Nick Lebowski or the big Nickowski or something of this nature. Good podcast. If we're going to do a Big Lebowski parody, though, I need, about German football, I need impersonations of the Germans. Where was that? That's missing from Stuttgart there, as they once again capture a vital win. Too early to say that they are back in the title race yet, because the table does not bear that out. For the time being, looks to be the case that Leipzig and Leverkusen join Bayern in vying for the Bundesliga title at this particular snapshot in time. Frankfurt, after living up to their sketchy and streaky reputation, probably shouldn't be considered title contenders. Anything to add on those matches, Mark, while I go plug in my phone?
Yeah, what can you say? I think obviously Nick Voltamada, again, as you mentioned, he's proven to be a real player. All 6'9" of him, or however tall he is, but he was excellent again. And to be honest, they're going to be praying they get through the group so they can bring him in to the Champions League squad for a potential playoff, because he's been one of their players of the season so far, really. And has definitely been one of their most impressive onboardings of the off season. Obviously on the kind of the lighter incident, it was unfortunate, and I don't condone it. Absolutely don't condone it. But I very much don't expect that they're going to get 3 points out of it. I suppose when you're that desperate, you've only picked up 3 points from 15 games. The best they're going to get is a default win, isn't it? It might be the only win they get all season if it comes to pass. But I don't think they can justify giving that for just one man's stupidity, basically. I'm sure the club will focus on kind of kicking that guy out and basically just kind of, that's it basically for me. And yeah, Dortmund is probably the other story, isn't it? I mean, 3 back-to-back 1-1 draws for them. Not good enough, really. I mean, we watched a bit of it, Peter, in the Red Bull Arena, didn't we? And it looked a pretty grim evening, to be honest, in Dortmund. It looked like it was cold, rainy, and the performance, particularly from the home side, was desperately poor. And the fact they only averaged 0.52 XG is shocking, really, for a Dortmund side at home. I mean, Hoffenheim played well and deserved the point, I felt, really, and respect to them for that under Ilza, who's still not impressed Peter yet, but we'll have to see whether he can do that further down the line. So, yeah, that pretty much concludes everything for today. So, yeah, as we mentioned before, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and turn on notifications so you can see all of our vlogs. We did actually go to 3 games over the weekend as well, and obviously 2 Bundesliga. So yeah, don't forget to check out that, and don't forget as well, we are on all of our kind of journeys were documented on Instagram. So if you want to give us a follow on @OverTheBarFB, then don't forget to do that as well. So thank you, Peter, for joining us. We got through it. Obviously, myself and Peter are a little bit on the tired side after a weekend of ground hopping and then traveling today and working too. So yeah, it's been a long day, but I hope you enjoyed the show today, and we will be back on Thursday for the predictions. So yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and see you then.